Greetings. This is John Savers of World War II. I'm going to continue with our recent little series on engineering, science, mathematics, and so forth, and how they stack up against the allegations a massive Holocaust of the Jews in the work camps, both in Germany and in Poland, with revisions making the Polish camps the only camps that were used for this dread purpose. Now, it has been my contention that this matter, the Holocaust, is a great deceit and fraud. It is my belief that along with the overseeing of the massive, untimely deaths in the USSR after the revolution in Russia by the communists, and in this particular closing of World War II, the greatest crimes that have been committed in the 20th century, or perhaps almost any time in history, and both at the hands of Jews. It is something which is hushed up, stifled. It does not exist in the minds of most because they have no information which will lead them to suppose that this is the case. But if the terrible events did not happen, then the charges against those German officers and civilians in regard to this, resulting in their executions, were simply murders. Now, there are a lot of people who are unindicted co-defendants with that element within jury which pushed this. I personally believe the British leadership under the Masons, the City of London, and in the United States, the Anglophile and Masonic orders, all chipped in to let this happen. The French, of course, participated, but they did not have the power at that time because they had been sort of reinstated, as it were, themselves. And without the United States and Great Britain, and perhaps even the USSR, they would be in a very weak position. But we have these events that were claimed, and we had terrible images presented. Many of these images, as it turns out, were frauds. They were hastily put together sketches which were photographed and presented as if they were photographs of the real thing. And the whole matter has so much fraud in this sense that it should awaken any active mind. Why were the judges in these cases so gullible? Well, I would think that the issue maybe goes beyond gullible, and that they are parties to the crimes, just as many Supreme Court judges and federal judges here may be, in part, parties to a crime. But at any rate, we think that it is foolish to look to judges after Nuremberg for righteousness, for putting things right, but really to countenance evil. This is what they've done, and this is what should be expected, along with the media covering up as well. So as long as a massive cover-up goes on, successfully, I suppose it will continue to be presented in schools as the real thing. We don't really like this. We know that one of the basic beliefs of these people is that the old die, the young forget. And we believe in this particular series, as we do in Fight, Flee, or Laugh, Mr. George Orwell's comment, his formula, so to speak, paraphrased, that those who control the present control the past, and those who control the past control the future. And considering the level of deceit and blood spilling over the last 120 years, I think it should give everyone in the world reason to tremble. But let's go forward with our examination under the title of Science and Engineering versus the Holocaust. We will return to Mr. Russ Granada and Carlo Montano, I think it is, Montano, but please attend. Therefore, it is the conviction of Rudolf, that is Germar Rudolf, that the only conclusion which can explain all factors involved is that in the facilities alleged, no mass gassings with Zyklon B could have occurred under the conditions attested to by alleged eyewitnesses, court witnesses, journalists, academics, or other propagandists. Now let us move on to Carlo Montano regarding technical aspects of the crematory ovens of Auschwitz as well as the gas chambers. Montano has credited Forson, that is Professor Forson, as being in the vanguard of researchers which has brought up technical aspects concerning allegations that homicidal gas chambers existed in German World War II concentration camps such as Auschwitz-Birkenau. Forson noticed that in none of the judicial courts during the many trials against so-called Nazi war criminals there had never been a call for performing an expert technical examination of the alleged weapon of the crime. In other words, a technical study of the alleged homicidal gas chamber. So he himself began such a technical study, and he even examined a genuine execution gas chamber in an American penitentiary. This was important because so-called exterminationist historiography was full of a sort of theological dogmatism. This dogmatism was exemplified by a group of French historians making an anti-scientific declaration concerning alleged Hitlerian extermination policies during World War II. As reported in the French newspaper Le Monde on February 21, 1979, these historians made the following declaration: "We must not ask ourselves how such a mass murder was technically possible. It was technically possible because it took place. Such is the obligatory point of departure of all historic investigation on this subject." Now this is a citation from the Barnes Review, September-October 2002, page 48, an article by Russ Granada the Auschwitz death camp. Those of you who are familiar with the sort of commentary that comes out of Marxist theoreticians will find the French historians' remarks totally congenial with those which come out of the communist theoreticians. And I think it's safe to see where they are coming from. Also, it's very interesting that Professor Forson would take this upon himself. He is not specifically, I take it, to be a scientist or engineer, simply an intelligent observer, which he brought to bear because no one else would do it. Why do you think I'm here? No one else will do it. People criticize me for this reason and that, which is all phony, when no experts will touch the subject for fear of the Jews. And that's the bottom line. So, but let's continue, shall we? Well, that attempted taboo was not to stand. Within that decade, the French pharmacist Jean-Claude Pressac, although faulted in other ways, at least gave the impression that he wanted to technically study the topics of gas chamber and crematory installations within German wartime camps, such as Auschwitz. Pressac's 1989 book, published in English, was Auschwitz, Technique and Operation of the Gas Chambers. His 1993 book, published in French as Les Crématoires d'Auschwitz, la machinerie de meurtre de masse, was followed by a 1994 English language version called The Machinery of Mass Murder at Auschwitz, which appeared in the anthology Anatomy of the Auschwitz Death Camp, published by Indiana University Press in association with the United States Holocaust Memorial, Washington, D.C. However, despite the titles of his books, Pressac did not find any proof of the existence of any homicidal gas chamber at Auschwitz-Birkenau. And as for the consumption of coke in the ovens of Auschwitz-Birkenau, Pressac says nothing. Now this is a citation from the Barnes Review, September-October 2002, page 48, an article by Russ Granada. Well, it would be very interesting, I think, if we went back in time to 1979 in the United States, at the time that the French historians made their comment, to see if the Washington Post, then under the hand of Boss Lady Graham, made any comment on this or cited these people or featured these people. It might well be, since these professors are congenial to what is being pushed in the United States as temples of Holocaustism sprout every which way. But it would be interesting to go back and check if the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal and the Post and so forth brought this up. They certainly seem to be uniform in stifling any comment, any evidence. They would tend to negate this particular matter and talk in outraged and inflamed rhetoric in regard to any person who would dare to question the whole matter. It smells to high heaven. But let's go forward. In his Auschwitz, Technique and Operation of the Gas Chambers, Pressac maintains that from April to October of 1943, the crematories of Birkenau cremated 165,000 to 215,000 bodies using 497 tons of coke, resulting in an average consumption of 2.6 kilograms or 5.7 pounds of coke per body. Now, to see just what technical value press-ex presentations are, let us take a look at this question of coke consumption. During the period from October 31 to November 13 of 1941, with the Topf two-chambered oven in the crematory at Gusen, which was a subcamp of Mauthausen, 677 adult corpses were cremated using a total consumption of 20,700 kilograms of coke. That comes to an average of 30.5 kilograms or 67 pounds of coke per body. Since on the average 52 cremations per day were carried out and the oven remained in continual thermic balance, that signifies that the average consumption of coke was the minimum obtainable with that type of crematory oven. Now, this experimental data can also be correctly attributed to the 3 Topf double-chambered ovens of the Auschwitz crematory, which therefore required, on the average, 30.5 kilograms of coke for the cremation of one adult human corpse. Now, let me just interrupt to mention that amongst all this dry discussion of the practical aspects of burning a human body, there is kind of between the words, the interstices, so to speak, or stices, an absurdity that just seems to roll and radiate and fill the pages and the environment around the mind, swelling with the absurdity of the whole issue of the Germans in a life and death struggle with their Allied forces, spending all this time and energy to mass murder and burn up people. It is just so preposterous. One wonders how anyone other than a judge would give it credit. But let's go forward. As a matter of fact, the Topf 3 and 8-chambered ovens at the Birkenau crematories offered a thermotechnical advantage because of the way they were constructed. So they were able to conspicuously reduce fuel consumption. For example, for the cremation of one human corpse, the 3-chambered oven required 20 kilograms of coke, while the 8-chambered oven required 15 kilograms of coke. These numbers refer to emaciated adult corpses. Now, if we were to postulate that there really were homicidal gassings, then the minimum theoretical coke consumption at the Birkenau crematories would have averaged 13 kilograms compared to the 2.6 kilograms assumed by Pressek. This is a citation from the Barnes Review, September-October 2002, page 49, article by Russ Grenada. And yes, Russ Grenada is not the kind of person that the deans and directors of the 3 Georges want lecturing at their schools. I refer, of course, to Georgetown University, George Mason University, and George Washington University, and the whole 9 yards of them. Besides, no one who presents this kind of evidence can expect anything other than to be attacked by hoodlums from Hillel. But at any rate, let's go forward. Let us now take up the question of cremation capacity of the crematories. The average duration of one cremation was approximately 1 hour in the Toff ovens at Auschwitz-Birkenau. These ovens were planned and constructed for the cremation of one single body at a time. In fact, the small hourly heat availability of these ovens made it impossible to achieve economically advantageous cremations by trying to cremate 2 or more cadavers together, both in terms of coke consumption as well as duration. Therefore, simultaneous cremations of 4 bodies per hour, as Pressack maintains, was, for all the more reason, technically impossible. Also, we must remember that functioning of the cremation ovens required downtime, a pause of at least 4 hours per day to clean coke slag from the grills. Therefore, the maximum capacity of the Auschwitz-Birkenau cremation ovens could not possibly have been more than 1,040 bodies per day. This is a citation from the Barnes Review, September-October 2002, page 49, article by Russ Granada. Now, people, please keep that phrase in mind throughout. That is technically impossible. The proponents of this great deceit want to throw out such considerations and make a circular argument the rule on this particular issue, and I'm sure the federal judges and the Supreme Court judges in this country will be anxious to please him in this matter. But the circular argument, actually it is the exact meaning of the phrase begging the question, which is almost always misused by journalists, but that is the proposition is put forth and then answered by itself. In the Pressack hypothesis of the reality of homicidal gassings, taking into account the percentage of infants and children among the gassed persons, and considering their average weight and function of age, the daily cremation capacity could have been augmented somewhat, resulting in 1,248 bodies per day. Now, this does not mean that the Auschwitz SS ordered the cremation of 1,248 or 1,040 bodies per day. These are simply the maximum theoretical figures. Now, this is a citation from the Barnes Review, September-October 2002, page 49, an article by Mr. Russ Granada. Now, also, I'd like to call your attention to a certain matter. This is an area, of course, I don't have a great understanding, technical understanding, but I will say, nevertheless, and those who know, feel free to correct. But in listening to Mr. Granada's article, it occurred to me that if those crematories are shut down, at least one at a time or however they do it, for purposes of cleaning off slag, etc., that these particular chambers would cool during that process. After the cleaning, and they were ready to be reused, It seems to me that it would take a little time for these chambers to get up to proper heat, levels of heat. And this is something which might be added to this downtime. It does not seem to be considered in this article. I think it may be something which would add to the downtime. I'm sure that they would not resume cremating bodies until those chambers were back up to a certain heat level, and I doubt it could be done instantaneously. Taking into consideration all the circumstances, we can maintain that the Bauleitung at Auschwitz ordered those 46 crematory chambers from the Toff Company because they were forecasting possible health-endangering epidemic conditions which might result in a mortality rate of approximately 500 prisoners per day among an average forecasted camp population of 200,000. So the cremation capacity of the crematories was therefore quite adequate for the projected increase of the camp population within the forecast of a possible typhus epidemic. Now, this is, again, a citation from the Barnes Review, September-October 2002, pages 49 and 50, article by Mr. Russ Grenada. With that said, folks, a wrap. We're out of time again. This is John Savers on World War II. My name is John Savers. I'm your host. I do appreciate your tuning in and hope to see you again at our next John Savers on World War II.